Hi. Are you gonna join me today? Are you gonna join me today? Yeah, so today we're gonna hang out on my bed, fold some laundry, and talk about my favorite budget travel hacks. I have a little bit of some notes over here, and let's like have some fun and fold laundry and play with dogs. Yeah. All right, so let's dump this out. So I thought I would try doing it this way because I don't want to be a talking head and I have a lot that I need to do. And so I thought maybe we just do two things at the same time and see how that works. I have a trip coming up. I'm going to Dublin, Ireland, and I've been a little stressed out about it because it's going to be a little bit more expensive than I thought it was going to be. Um, like it's I didn't really have a plan going into it other than I just wanted to have a trip for this vlog. Um, and that's kind of a bad way to like have a budget, to make a budget, to do anything on a budget, right? So that would be my first hack is have a budget in mind before you have a destination in mind. Like, if you know you can only spend X amount of dollars, don't book something that's going to cost more than that. I know that sounds so basic, but like, I did not think this through, right? I went out looking for a cheap ticket. I found a cheap ticket, and then that cheap ticket ended up being $200 more because I wanted to bring a suitcase. So all of a sudden, my cheap ticket was not cheap. And then my next hack is stay at a hostel because hostels are so cheap. And I'm not doing that either. I'm staying at a castle. The castle is not a hostel. And so I could be staying for a week in Dublin for like less than $200, and instead I'm spending almost $1,000 on my hotel. And that's the part that's making me sick right now. But how often do you get to stay in a castle? Like, unless you live in a castle, how often do you just get to stay in a castle? Right? And so and I'm still considering whether or not this is what I should do, which is stay in the hostel for 5 of the 7 days that I'm there, and then stay like a night or 2 nights just before I'm leaving at the castle. And the benefit of that would be saving an insane amount of money, except in the end of it, you're really not, because that castle's still going to be costing, $200 a night. So I could just pay, so I'm still paying $400 plus $100, but I don't know. I just can't make the math the way that I need it to in order. Oh, make sure you unfold your socks when you put them in the laundry, because otherwise they come out covered in stuff they're not supposed to be. We're live, folks. So yeah, I didn't actually intend for this to be an airing of all the issues that I have. Sorry, my dog found a bone. So if you hear that, I'm not editing around that. It is what it is. But yeah, so I didn't really mean to air all my grievances about this upcoming trip that I'm doing, except that's kind of where I'm at right now. I I I, I don't even know if I even want to really go on this trip. This is not where this video is supposed to go. I can edit around this. I probably won't. Yeah, so stay in a hostel. It'll save you so many dollars if that's your plan, if that's what you need to, have a budget that you can stick to. My next one is using public transportation when at all possible. I feel like that's kind of one of those basic rules for travel. You travel the way the locals do, because public transportation, costs a couple dollars per ride, if that. Whereas taking an Uber or a taxi can cost $10, $20, $30, depending on where you're going. And it's like I've never done a solo trip before, which isn't true. Like, I've been to not dozens of places, but enough places to know like I'm capable of doing hard things. But right now my brain is screaming at me, do not take your luggage on the bus. I don't know why. So It's not like I had this problem before. And a lot of, especially like the airport buses, like they're designed, like they're cargo buses, right? Like they're designed to have a luggage hold underneath it so you don't have to like take it onto the bus with you. My problem is once you get into the city center, that's when you'll have to transfer onto whatever bus is going to take you to the hotel. And my alternative is, of course, taking a taxi from or an Uber. I think in Dublin, they don't have actual Ubers. You can call a taxi through the Uber app, but it's still a separate organization. Which sounds really complicated, and I don't really want to deal with that. So that's where I'm at. Um, Another way to save money, do your research. Showing up and not really knowing what you are going to do next is dumb. So having a good plan and not feeling rushed and overwhelmed by your options like I am feeling right now, because even though I've done my research, I kind of haven't been focusing on this because I've had other things come up that have been way more interesting than me going to Dublin for a week. um but doing your research and making sure that you know how you're getting from the airport to your hotel, from your hotel to whatever you're doing next, very, very important. And then one of the biggest things I feel like people don't make space for in their budget, or they underestimate how much it's going to end up costing, is food. Food can get really tricky when you're traveling, especially if you're like me and sometimes you forget to feed yourself. And then suddenly you find yourself, one, in the middle of nowhere without anywhere to eat, or two, surrounded by too many options and you've gotten to a place where you can't actually make a decision for yourself. So finding a way to balance that, I got one of those neurospicy brains, if you can't tell. Finding a way to balance that is really important. And I don't want to say you should like over research what your options are for food, but you should know that if you're going on a trip or an excursion, like, does it include a meal? If it doesn't include a meal, you can reach out to the tour operator and ask them, like, if there's not a meal included, then like how are we feeding ourselves? Like, are we being dropped off at a restaurant? Are we just sent out on our own to find places? Like, what's going on with that situation? And I think it's important to do that research, to ask those questions, especially if they're not listed in the tour thing, whatever it's called, because you don't want to be caught unaware, right? Like being able to hydrate and to feed yourself in a timely manner is literally going to make the difference between you having a great trip and you being miserable. My clothes are clean. What are you doing? Stay away. Stay away, dog. Stay away. I love you. What are you doing? You're ruining my clean clothes. Oh, I love you. Who cares if they're clean? Who cares if my clothes are covered in dog fur? Not me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have you. So yeah, my personal plan for my Dublin trip is when I get into town, I'm getting in kind of like mid-afternoon, so I'm going to go to my hotel, and my hotel has a couple of restaurants in it because it's fancy. But I kind of want to, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in Dublin proper while I'm there, so I kind of want to use that evening to go back into the city center, probably go hang out around Temple Bar a little bit, even though it's super touristy. I am a tourist. It's fine. And find something there and then find my way back my first full day in Dublin the next day. But I do know that I have at least the option of eating in my hotel if I decide I'm too tired to do anything else. So there's that. And then for the next couple of days after that, I'm planning on going on a bunch of tours. And I do not know what the food situation is going to be. And so I do need to do what I just said, which is to reach out to those tour companies and ask if I'm like what the food situation is going to be. Typically speaking, you should have a food budget in mind. And what I like to do is pick like one or two fancy meals that I really want to try, budget for that, and then plan on spending like the least amount possible for the other days. But also bearing in mind that, it's going to cost what it's going to cost. Um, I, so if you can stay in a place that either offers a free breakfast, so that's one more meal that you don't have to buy, or you are only going to subsist on coffee for breakfast or something like that. I'm planning on, because I know these tours are going to leave really early in the morning, I'm planning on when I go into the city center to find a little store, a convenience store or something, get a couple of protein bars and some snacky foods that I can keep stashed away in my purse or backpack or something, and have those be the bulk of my meals until dinner, when that's when I'll go out and get something real and delicious to eat. So, I don't really know what my food budget is going to be. I'm planning around $30-ish a day, but it could be more, it could be less, depending. I don't know. I don't know yet. But wherever you're going, it's going to be different. I easily spent, when I was in Seoul, anywhere between $15 a day on food up to like $75 a day. When I was eating barbecue by myself, because it was delicious and you have to order 2 orders, otherwise they won't serve you. So, yeah. So my other budget hacks, so if you plan in advance, if you know that you want to make travel a hobby, if you want to make it a part of your life in general, one of the things that's really important to do is either getting a credit card that gives you miles when you shop with it, or to sign up, because you can do both of these, right? Is to sign up for an airline's mileage program, shopping program. So like I know, Alaska Airlines, Delta, and American Airlines, they all have an online shopping program that's um, kind of like Rakuten, or I don't know if you remember like that Honey app where you install it and it'll show you the discounts that are available. So if you shop through it through their links, right? It's kind of like an affiliate link, except when you shop through it, they pay you back with miles. And so one of my favorite ways to rack up miles, is, if possible, if you're able to do it, you can sometimes book your vacation packages, your hotels through those links, and that will get you miles. I didn't do this, and I only mostly regret it. I could have booked my hotel through Delta. Delta has one, and I would have gotten like several thousand miles for booking it through them as opposed to doing it through booking.com, which I also love because I got like a 15% discount on it because I book through them all the time. But they don't give you miles, right? Like booking.com doesn't give you miles. Delta would have given me miles. But one of my other favorite ways to earn miles is to buy gifts for people, right? Like one of the easiest and most lucrative gifts that you can buy on these websites is flowers or floral arrangements. So, Valentine's Day is coming up, you got birthdays coming up, you got Mother's Day and Father's Day and graduation and Grandparents' Day. You buy a $50 set of flowers, you get 200 points, 200 miles, and eventually that all adds up into your next trip. I used miles that I had earned strictly through booking my own travel, and this is such a weird pant skirt thing. It's from Popflex Active, and I love them, but the belt's too wide, so they don't stay up very well. Anyway, folding it's a nightmare. I'm not gonna deal with it. I booked a whole trip to Hawaii using points. And I stayed at a hostel. So my ticket cost me like $50. My plane ticket cost me $50. My hotel cost me $200 for the week. And then I spent like $500 on food. I used public transportation. I went to Hawaii for a week for less than like $800. It was magical. That's kind of the trip that I was hoping to plan this time, but I just can't make myself stay in a hostel. I love hostels. Don't misunderstand me. I love hostels. They are such a great place to meet people and stay somewhere cheap, but I just want to be comfortable right now. Like they're comfortable, but I can't deal with that right now. I just can't. I just can't deal with that right now. And I can stay in a castle. Like who doesn't want to stay in a castle? Ignore me. Don't ignore me. So yeah, get on one of those programs because that'll help save tons and tons of money if you can book your ticket through that. You can also use those miles to book your hotel in certain programs and certain airlines. So it does take a while for those to build up, which is why having a credit card is helpful because it's a lot easier to build up those miles through credit cards than it is through these mileage programs. But again, if you don't have access to one of those credit cards for whatever reason, then those mileage programs really help. I would, however, not choose to do multiple airlines. I would pick one and stick with it, right? Because you don't want to spread yourself out. Otherwise, you'll never build up enough to any of them. And you can sometimes use different miles on different airlines, but it's better to just be consistent. And then in terms of saving money, I also really like to book my tickets out as far in advance as possible for two reasons. One, I find that I'm typically able to find lower prices for plane tickets if I book them, 6, 8, 9 months out in advance. I think the farthest out I've ever booked was 11 months because I think that's about as far as they'll let you is like 2 days short of 11 months or something or 12 months or whatever. So for Black Friday one year, I was able to book a ticket from Alaska to Spain for like $420, which is unheard of. So like that was an amazing deal. But I booked it for the next October. I booked it for my birthday. So I had basically a whole year to save up all the money that I was going to need for that trip, right? So I was able to save up money for the hotels that I was going to stay at. And then I decided that I didn't want to just stay in Spain. I wanted to explore some other places. So I was able to save up money and book some cheap tickets for a budget airline, Ryanair. Surely you know of those. Yeah, book the budget airlines. Just don't expect to bring your luggage. We'll get there. We're gonna get to some others, but I was able to, because I had all this time, I was able to kind of piecemeal my trip together so that at the end, when October rolled around, everything was paid for and all I needed was like food money and basic transportation money and whatever souvenirs I was gonna buy. And so all my trips were paid for, all of my excursions, all my tours, things like that. My hotels were paid for, my plane tickets were paid for. All I had to do was show up, and it was great, and I had so much fun. So I feel like if saving money is hard or you're afraid of things kind of popping up along the way that's like, oh no, I just saved this $2,000, but now I have to go spend it on fixing my car. Instead of like waiting for that big ball of money to show up, I find kind of paying it off a little bit at a time, but in a way that works for you and isn't predetermined by some third party credit company that's going to charge you 2,000% interest for the privilege of using them. That's worked really well for me in saving money and having a great experience. And then also, and kind of with choosing an airline for points and mileages and stuff like that, I'm a tourist and I happily admit to being a tourist. I love being a tourist. And so I like doing tourist things and I like booking tourist things through tourist companies. So all that said, I like to do it in a place where I'm going to get rewarded for my loyalty. And the two companies that I use the most to do that are Klook and or Klook, however they pronounce it. I don't actually know. It's either Klook or Klook, and Viator. So Viator will give you a very small percentage back on your trips that you book with them after you have finished the booking, right? So if I book something in November for February, once I've done the thing in February, then they give me a little cashback reward that I can put towards a future booking. Klook or Klook, whatever, also does the same thing, but they only do it once you've left a review for the activity that you've done. Which I think is fine because I really enjoy kind of having to like go back and go, oh, did I actually have a good time? Do they deserve a good review? Like, you know, I enjoy that part. So, and then I get to like remember all my memories and stuff like that. And so I was just looking before I started this video, how much I've earned for at least one of them. For Viator, I've earned about $21. And so that's going to pay for about a third of one of the trips that I have planned. And if I pull up the other one, sorry for not having this prepared, I'll just edit around this. Okay, so I have about $5 saved, which is not quite as exciting. So, but I also haven't used it as much as I use Viator. I use Viator more than I use Klook. I was very, very late to using Klook, and I used it when I was in Seoul. They have a lot of vendors in Seoul on there. So that's another really great way to save money. You know, you're spending money, you're saving money. It all comes back around, right? And then if you're finding that you need assistance in saving money outside of your job, your day job, whatever that is, to I lost my Christmas onesie. I needed it this past month. It's been so cold here. It's been so cold, and it's been in the dryer this whole time, and I regret it. If the money that you're making right now isn't enough to like put aside for whatever trips that you have planned, then you have to make more money. And I find that the easiest way to do that is to resell things. And I don't think that you should go out and like start this whole business. I think you just need to be very honest about what you have in your house, what you use and what you don't, and then take a couple of really decent photos and upload it onto Poshmark or Macari or Depop or whatever. And there's a little bit that goes into it, but as long as you have regular access to your local post office and they have free priority mail boxes there. So if you're like specifically for Poshmark, as long as you're using them, you can have access to their free boxes. You can scan a little code on your phone at their little kiosk, and you never have to talk to a person to send your stuff. You just need some tape. They'll print off the label at the post office, and you're good to go. Selling on Poshmark has changed a little bit over the years. They're very into live sales right now, and I'm not into that. But for somebody who, no matter what you do, trying to make money, trying to make a little bit of extra money, it's always going to take some level of effort. So as long as you're aware of that, it won't be that hard. You just need to be consistent about it and tell your friends, tell your family, post it on your social media, because people, especially if they know that you're like trying to support this like bigger goal, a lot of people will be happy to buy your used jeans or, sell your Harry Potter stuff or whatever. So that's one of the ways that I have made money in the past, and I'm able to set that aside for the trips that I want to take in the future. So I do have a very short list of things that you shouldn't do when you are trying to save money or budget for a trip abroad or a trip out of town. What is this called? I have some don't travel hacks, some do not do's for your budget travel hacks. So the first thing that you shouldn't do is that if you're trying to travel on a budget is to buy a bunch of stuff before you leave on your trip. It's so easy to convince yourself that you simply cannot travel without a new carry-on or without this set of packing cubes, or that you simply can't live without, oh, these hiking boots or coats or shoes or whatever. You don't need it. You don't, unless you're going to something that has a very, very specifically different climate than the one that you're currently in. And I'm talking like you're in Florida and you're going to Alaska. You're in, right? Like you're in the US and you're traveling, right? Like there's a good chance you already have the you already have the suitcase, you already have the swimsuits, you already have the coats. You just need to dig them out of storage. And you need to trust yourself that it's going to be okay if you're not wearing the brand new latest thing. Because the things that you spend getting ready to leave, that's almost never in your travel budget. And then you're always like, why did this end up costing so much more? Other things that are related to this, and I'm guilty of this myself, so do with it what you will, but like getting your hair done, getting your nails done, getting your eyebrows waxed, like the basic maintenance that maybe isn't already in your regular budget, that can actually blow your travel budget. So just be aware of that. Either make sure that you add it to your budget or you don't add additional things to it, right? The other thing is to not travel without travel insurance. Travel insurance is one of those things that really sucks to buy because you almost never have to use it. But on the off chance that you do, it can be an absolute lifesaver. I had a trip. I went to Seoul just a couple months ago, and I did not have travel insurance, and I should have. I absolutely should have. So there's two things that happened on this trip. First, it was right before Hurricane Helene landed, and that hurricane came all the way up into Ohio, which is where I live, and it knocked my power out for 4 days. So for 4 days before my trip, I had no power, which means I couldn't clean, I couldn't cook, I lost all my food, I lost everything, right? Like my whole life was just upended by this. And then the power comes back on. I'm rushing to get everything done, and my flight gets canceled. My flight gets rebooked, but it's not for the next 2 days. But it's 2 days later than when I was supposed to leave, which was completely devastating, right? Because I had booked this trip back in May. So my whole life and personality revolved around me making it to this trip, making it to Seoul. And so because it was canceled because of weather and it was rebooked so far out, I was able to get my ticket refunded. But if I had had travel insurance, I'd have gotten that money back from them too, which would have felt a lot better than having to scramble of having to, rebook a ticket on a different airline and then hoping that my refund would come through eventually, right? And I was lucky that I was financially able to like deal with that, because if I didn't have that additional money of a new plane ticket set aside, my whole trip would have been canceled. It would have completely destroyed me. Um, and then at the end of my trip, I actually ended up really messing up my ankle. And while I know that I probably could have gone to the doctor there without American insurance, health insurance, I was so uncomfortable with the idea of like even finding out how much that would have cost or what the process would have been like, that I chose not to. And it's like 3 months later and my ankle's still messed up from then. So it just goes to show that like you should never expect or hope that anything bad is going to happen while you're traveling, but just in case it does, having travel insurance can literally make the difference between you having a good experience between it bankrupting you, right? Because so many people, when they're traveling, whether you have money set aside or not, like that travel could have completely derailed my entire life, not just my trip, but it could have derailed my housing situation. It could derail my pets. It could have derailed my car. Like it could have derailed so many things because I had to borrow to do this instead, right? So have travel insurance. Save yourself the headache. And then the other thing, especially if you're traveling on a budget, is airlines have gotten really, really greedy. This is not news, right? But what is kind of, it's not news, but what is really hard is how expensive bringing luggage is, right? So I've noticed that if you're traveling, no, because the ticket that I booked originally for Dublin did not include luggage at all. They wanted me to travel with a carry-on, and that was it. And I said, "Excuse you, sir, I'm an adult. I want to bring a bag." And so I ended up paying $200 more just so I didn't have to pay $150 for each leg of the stupid journey or whatever it was, right? It made more sense to just move the ticket up a level instead of paying for it separately. So if you're going to travel on a budget, do your best. Don't be like me, you know, try to pack light and bring a carry-on. But, when you know that you have a bunch of camera equipment that you're going to bring and you have certain goals that require certain whatever, just make sure that you book your ticket accordingly. And then my last tip, and I'm not quite done with my laundry here, but my last tip is don't blow your budget by not having a budget. Don't be like me. I didn't have a budget for this trip. And all of a sudden I started adding it up this morning and I was like, oh, girl, no, this wasn't the plan. This wasn't the plan. This is not how you wanted to do it. I just told you that you needed to have travel insurance. Guess what? I still haven't booked yet. It's not part of my budget. And it's one more thing that I have to pay for now. And it feels bad. But you know what's going to feel even worse? My flight getting canceled again and me not getting refunded for the person watching my dogs, not getting refunded for my plane ticket, not getting refunded for my hotel, not getting refunded for, all these excursions that I just booked. Like, yeah. All because it wasn't in my budget because I didn't have a budget. And all, like just budget. Make sure you're following a budget. So that being said, because I was so overwhelmed today by all the budgeting that I didn't do and that I needed to do, I actually, before I sat down, I actually went and I created an actual budget planner. And I was able to write everything out, and it makes a lot more sense, and I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about what I'm spending, where I'm going to spend it, and what my expectations are for this trip. And so if you would like your own copy of a travel budget planner, I have a link for that in the description of this video. And that's all I got today. I still got some laundry to get through, but I want to thank you for hanging out with me. This has been a lot of fun. And yeah, stay tuned because, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like this or whatever, because you don't want to miss out on my Dublin trip, right? I done nothing but talk about my Dublin trip. So come with me. Let's go together. All right, goodbye.